These are the real and raw stories of business owners who have ventured off on their own and into the unknown. I'm Reagan Avon, and this is the In Your Business podcast. Derek, welcome to this side of the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's my favorite side.
Cheers, real quick. I know these are
Cheers.
White Claws, but
These are Beth masterpieces.
they really are. She had a name for it. I forget what it was. She named it.
It's like 97 degrees out today. I think that this sounds just right.
I love lime. I'm glad you picked lime.
Lime is the only White Claw that matters.
It really is.
I mean, cocktail. Full creation.
Yeah. I mean, you said it was like a gin without the gin. Gin and tonic without the gin.
Yeah, or like a LaCroix with the actual flavor.
Is it LaCroix or LaCroix?
Oh, I said it on purpose. It's the word is croix. It's like a French word. I don't know how
then
we
it's
just
LaCroix.
decided that we're just going to call it croix, but I think that the company itself has come out and said it's like that.
Ah, okay. Well, I've been screwing that up.
We have a company right here in town that everyone knows very well that takes the word homage and calls it homage, so
That's right.
it's vernacular.
Whatever you
We're
want.
allowed to get away with whatever we want.
So, you've been crafting cocktails for this podcast for the last, 3 months.
Yeah, like a weird, stretched out, fun pandemic version of it, yeah.
Yeah. And so, first of all, how long have you been crafting cocktails?
I guess overall about a decade now, give or take.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like I did a little tiny bit of non-craft bartending in the end of, kind of the middle of college, around the early 2000s, quite a while ago. And it was always there, but I'd always worked through my college jobs. My college working was always serving tables and doing hospitality stuff. And I kind of stumbled back into it some years later after doing some other post-college jobs for a company here in town, and I just was given, they would just switch the managers there every 6 months to do the bar program versus doing the HR, the scheduling, and the kind of staff work. And I got that, and I swear it wasn't within 2 weeks of doing that, I was hooked on that, and that was around 2010.
Wow. So you started with kind of the operations of a restaurant. And
Yeah. I had come back to a restaurant, and after serving forever, but I was doing administrative work. I was hosting and just doing opening, procedural, basic assistant stuff. And I liked that part. I liked the administrative aspect of it and kind of helping lead a little bit, I guess. And then I think it was probably coincidentally the craft beer explosion or beginning of it was happening at that time, like the very, very first ones. And I've always liked makers. I love connecting with people who make, an actual physical thing from scratch for us to enjoy, especially if it's the kind that maybe gets you tipsy. I guess I lend myself towards a little bit more. And I was really enamored with that, and I also was taking over just a very naive position as the bar manager in a job like that for a while that I just started managing at 6 months before. And it kind of caught on. It was instant. I remember making the first cocktail I made, and the person who taught it to me, and all the pretty much every step since then.
So was it they already had the recipe and they were just showing you how to make it, or it was the first time you had crafted your own?
It was, besides, I'm sure taking some cranberry juice or something in a fridge and just dumping it into stuff. Although I remember putting Gatorade with cheap vodka in college in freshman year, so it definitely wasn't some innate talent that was just waiting to be discovered. I don't know. But the restaurant that I was at, which is very close to where we're recording actually, was leading up to a new cocktail menu, and they usually kind of encourage the staff and the bartenders to create those. And an old friend, a really, really good bartender named Joe, just hung out with me after work one night and he just basically gave me a ratio of try this amount of ounces of your main spirit, this amount of ounces of a secondary kind of modifying spirit liquor, this much if you're using citrus, this much if you're using sugar, and kind of just use that template and go from there. And in my mind, the cocktail I made that night was delicious and amazing. And I did get that cocktail on a menu. So the first cocktail I ever made for a restaurant got placed on that restaurant's menu a few weeks later. So I don't know if it was just the reassurance or the ego boost that happened, but I've been hooked since then.
That's so awesome. I
I
mean,
like it.
it's one of those things, like many things, that blends this creativity side and very technical, scientific,
Yes.
mixture. So,
yeah.
I'm curious, like, when did you, and I know I don't know anything about cocktails, but I've seen some people who make it who use pretty extravagant equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when's the first time you started experimenting with that? If you have, what was that like?
Quickly, I would say. Yeah, I do like that aspect of it a lot. I like that, and I'm definitely a technical preparing bartender. Like, I definitely measure everything. I still do live. I'm not flipping stuff in the air and just winging it and just pouring them in and just being like, here it is, and sliding it down the bar. I put a lot of time and thought into it, but I like that, and I like doing that fussy stuff separately, because I like that sort of laboratory kind of creative aspect of that. And then I believe it's important once you have that figured out, and it's almost selfishly fulfilling. I love just being able to just get lost in, whether it's my home kitchen, my home bar, or a bar at a premise I'm at, and just diving into it from that angle, and then stopping and having the experience aspect of it is all that matters after that. It should only be fun. It should only be enjoyable or informative. And it definitely it should be collaborative as well. Like with the guest, I don't believe it should ever be like a talking down kind of thing. So I like both of those, and I would say within a year, that first year of it, I was definitely starting to track down either techniques that I could learn or equipment or tools that I could use to do different weirder things. And I've had eras where I've been much more weird with the cocktails and much more boundary pushing, and coming back and then making sure I don't forget about the flavors and the profiles and all those things that matter by far more than anything.
Did you study those types of things like with a book? Like, how do you study these profiles and know what goes?
Yeah, there was resources. There's lots of great cocktail books, and I would say a lot of bartenders and the kind of type of bartenders that we are and that are my compatriots, my fellows, ladies and gentlemen, fellows. That is that term. Talk about certain cocktail books a lot and rely on them a lot. And I don't know if it's because I'm too dumb to sit down and do that version, but they haven't been a big, huge source of it for me. I use them a lot, and I've definitely gotten jumping off points from it. But once I have that, I don't want to follow too many rules. But there's some that just follow you intrinsically, like certain cocktail ratios for classic cocktails. They all kind of come out of a group that you're not stretching that far away from. But I like to not get too reliant on it so that I can just make up whatever I want.
Yeah, and I assume with like the increasing complexity of some of these cocktails, operationally, if you're thinking about, okay, now this is on the menu, we gotta train the bartenders to make them, and we've got to probably scale back a little bit on the complexity because people are only going to wait so long to get a drink. How do you balance that when you're trying to build a menu?
That's the quintessential thing, and that changes just for me, I guess, from the types of places that I've bartended. I've had these 6 years of running my consultancy where I'm doing my own pop-ups or sometimes a one-time cocktail for a one-time promotional thing. So the fact that it might be extravagant or a little far-fetched or technique-driven is less relevant because it only needs to be perfect one time. Or it might just need to be perfect for one night. And I use that as an outlet to do that kind of thing between my events and my pop-ups and the kind of stuff I'm hired in for. I will completely exhaust myself on that for weeks. One event I have is usually 2 or 3 weeks of hard work or days where I'm paralyzed because I'm stressful thinking about the things that I want to do. So it's all work. I'm always putting it together.
Yeah. And
then I get to exhaust that there. When I'm creating for a bar, that's just like, a public place that you don't control how many people come in at one time. You don't, a party might be 15 people one day and a whole bunch of small groups. The next day it might be dead. It might be really busy all the time. You always have to assume it's that version. And there are other hands in it besides just mine.
Right.
So that becomes and I think being able to have pushed the boundaries with the kind of stuff I've liked to have created and the kind of styles and the techniques that I put them in, I've learned if I can possibly pull that off in a more traditional restaurant or bar setting, or if there's a way to do it and pull back a little bit and kind of find that balance. So it changes. There's not one set version.
Yeah, so what you mentioned, you got hired a decent amount. When was the first time that you were like, I can start getting hired by different people to do these types of events and crafting cocktails? Because I'm sure that's like you go from working at a restaurant and working at a bar to being like, wow, I can make my own money on the side doing this. So what was that moment for you?
And I was absolutely searching for that kind of thing at the time. By searching I meant mainly dreaming or wistfully thinking that I could do that because of more creatively. It wasn't even financially necessarily driven at the time. I just wanted more creative outlets. I was working in a setting where you might get 3 or 4 new cocktails that are available to the public that we put on a menu every 5 or 6 months. And a couple things in between there. You could do cocktail competitions or like one-off kind of things for guests that would come in, dealer's choices as we call them, where someone would just come in and maybe give you a jumping off point or maybe just be wide open. And I was always looking for those at that time, but it wasn't enough creatively. And I know specifically the first time, actually, I'll say them by name because I believe they're co-friends of ours. My friends Adam and Allie Lehman of the Wonder Jam.
That is how I found out about you.
Two of the coolest, if not the coolest individuals in the entire city, and 2 people I love dearly, were looking for. So in case anyone watching doesn't know, they run their company that does brand design, life coaching, design, web design, all that kind of stuff, and they had a client that was an Italian wine company who wanted to make wine cocktails for their website.
Cool.
And they started asking around some friends, and I believe my friend Nils Root, another good guy.
I know him too.
You do? That's the other person I meant to tell you about. Side note. Future Nils interview coming. But he was asked by them, and they said he mentioned me because just I was at the Pearl at the time in the Short North as the beverage director, and he was around a lot, and we shared a lot of friends in common. We played flag football together, and he just mentioned me to him, and they came and asked me, and Allie likes to tell the story of when she asked me how much I would charge, and I had no idea. And I said the equivalent of like $20. It wasn't really that much, but it wasn't very much. And they said, "No, this is a big company. We're gonna pay you more, and these are the kind of things that we'll do for it." And it was a career altering day for me for sure. We just went from 7 a.m. till like 8 p.m. that day. We shot 19 different cocktails.
Cool.
And at the end of it, I didn't have to like close down the bar or count the money or make sure all the staff was out or turn the lights out. And I had a bigger paycheck and was super creatively rewarded after that. It was within 4 or 5 months after that I went back over to their spot and said, I want to do this. I want to create this as my thing, as my own thing, like an actual branded kind of commodifiable thing that I'm going to do. And
the Reno Reserve was born.
It was. It was. Some April day and some day, how many ever years ago it was, 6 years ago from now.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, so you've been crafting cocktails. I also know that you do bar design. So where did that start happening, or when did that start happening?
Well, like, bar design is a passion, and it's a thing I've gotten to do in extremely small fragments, so it's not like I'm being skirted around to every bar all over the city to put them together. But truthfully, it's that the Reno Reserve started out with a lot of different things. It was brand design like that we discussed, menu development for other places that were either in existence and wanted to elevate their craft cocktail programs or even just have one at all, or places that were starting off new and needed that aspect of their business created. And so I did a lot more of that in the first 2 or 3 years of it, and our own pop-ups. And then I started getting hired through those to do elevated craft cocktail events brought somewhere, whether it was, I've done them in boutiques in the Short North and clothing, paper stores, you name it, and a lot of private events at people's homes as well. And in the last 2.5 or so, maybe 3 years, I would say it's increased where I'm probably 75% those types of gigs versus the menu development. And every event that I did became a place that I would create. I would do a little tiny bit of brand or bar design. It was very important to me to. There's other people that do cocktail events remotely, or do tastings, or bring things to other places or other businesses. And to be honest, it's a table much like this one, maybe a tablecloth, a silver bucket with ice, a scoop, a whole stack of plastic cups, and a couple bottles. And it was just honestly too boring for me. I didn't want to have a company that I named and that I ended up putting my own name into, wisely or not, and just come and just bring that and then just make that the experience. I always think that the experience matters most, and I think that the visuals and the vibe and the style and the warmth of what you can create is an important part of it. So once I had the most important part, the cocktails, figured out for those events, I would focus on that. And basically I got to do that every single time I did a new event. And there were times I was doing 4 or 5 in one week, 6 in 1 week, which I can't believe I survived. But I liked doing that. I liked the feedback. I liked creating that and setting those sort of things up. So then I started getting lucky enough to do it in some of my more standard gigs, because the Arena Reserve was always there. I did do it for a year and a half where it was the only thing I did as far as income. But more often than not, I've had either a bar managing or bartending gig in conjunction with it and doing it. And some of those places started allowing bits and pieces of that into it. And then now, full circle, as we're opening Echo Spirits near here in Grandview, Joe and Nikhil, our owners, have the trust and not just trust, but the excitement for the cocktail program and the bar program that I put together was so well received, and we had such a good relationship with it. And then it was pretty hard for me, honestly, is where I'm there to not. We started looking around and we're talking about tiling and background lighting and where the shelving would go. And they just started letting me do that, and now it's been a process that I've had a big hand in with them, which
that's
I'm
very
super
cool.
grateful for. And sometimes, especially during this COVID time, it's been odd at times because there's not new cocktail or new fresh stuff to work on very often, except when we have new material for new content to photograph or stuff for the website. It's mainly making sure all the structure and the design is in place. So slowly we've kept doing that, which I'm not mad at.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we first met and started shooting this show, you had told me that the place had kind of closed its doors temporarily before it had even opened them.
On March 15th, which was the day that they announced everything was closing at 9 p.m., I had every detail. We had everything in place. We were maybe 3 weeks from opening, and we got. I had 2 cocktails that were more elaborate and thought out, and I hadn't perfected them yet. And I just wanted collaboration. I think is the most important. Just me. I like me by my lab in the lab doing that kind of thing. But you're never going to get as good an item or as good an experience without some other people being involved. So I invited 5 or 6 bartender friends into the distillery to help me figure out those last 2 and just kind of have a fun night and relax and cut loose a little bit and figure out those 2. And like an hour into it, one of my buddies looked up from his phone and said that they're closing everything at 9 p.m. tonight. So we were that close, and it's through a whole handful of experiences since then. It's delayed us a little bit more, but there's been benefits to it as well.
Has it opened back up?
No. So I have never.
You're waiting for the grand opening still.
We have done a couple events there prior to this, so those were the only true bartending, behind the bar kind of hospitality experiences we've had, and we haven't had. That's been a while because we can't. Obviously, we've been very careful and safe. We did a 9-week online virtual cocktail class, the Stay at Home
cool.
Cocktail Club.
That's cool.
Hashtag.
I was gonna say, a lot of people were probably drinking.
Yeah, and it was fun. We used a program where we could, kind of like Facebook Live, but a little bit more involved, where we could see all the questions live, and you could by the end of it, you could usually tell that they were making the cocktails along with us. It was really fun. It was very rewarding. It was very cool to do. Yeah, but
That's
not
awesome.
opened yet. Soon.
Oh gosh, I know, so close. It's like one of those things. I had launched my business like 2 weeks. Well, I had planned to. Like 2 weeks before everything happened.
Oh,
so it's like the
yes.
timing has just been impeccable for some people I've talked to.
Impeccable is a nice. I keep saying, calling it poetic.
Yeah,
I suppose,
very poetic.
but like dark poetic. Like
Right,
I thought for a while I kept thinking that we had this weirdly dark poetic version of like, especially as a new place and as a distillery that's trying to get off the ground by using the bar as a public awareness platform, and then that close. But I've heard a few others. There's a bar over here near us in Grandview who Rye River Social, don't shout them out, who was doing soft openings for 3 days straight, like completely filled their place up. Did it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or those 3 days, and then they were opening on Monday, like on the 16th of March.
Oh man!
And they were finishing the soft opening with a full packed house, and saw that notice and had to be like, oh no, we are not opening up. Like the day of their grand opening. So there's a couple of those out there.
So, but instead, you, and I know this only because you've brought us hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
You started making hand sanitizer out of the distillery, so that's cool. How did that
it came about, I suppose, from a really impressive and rather quick pivot from, our two owners are also the distillers. So that's a really cool thing about it too.
Neat.
The guys running the place are also people making stuff. They're not just kind of like creating a style and investing in a thing and not really being a part of it. They're part of it. And I think a couple days after the initial announcement, I saw an article about a distillery in Oregon that was starting hand sanitizer, and I sent them a link and was like, I think we should think about this. And you could I'm sure that would, these guys have left their two respective careers that they've created to start this thing, and they want to make stuff. They want to make this rye whiskey and our rum and all these things, and I'm sure that to all of the distilleries, not just us, I'm sure that was like, oh god,
right?
That's what but it only took, I'd say, within a week, it became clear that this was going to stick around for a little while, and that would be not only something like viably financial for them to be able to do, but also, it was definitely like a real need.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
So, they were able to sell some and also do good things with a lot of it and donate it to good causes. And they pivoted instantly. We made the first batch basically like the way we distill our rum. Then some of the cool community things were, so like when you distill a spirit, it's basically the same thing as making a beer minus the hops. You're putting in your grains and sugars and having the yeast eat it off, and you get into the middle step of distilling, and you basically have a raw beer of sorts, and then you distill it. So if you have that already, you can skip those two steps. And because of the pandemic, like a couple wineries, local ones, had like giant vats of their red wine that weren't going to stay fresh, and they wanted to do something smart with it, so they brought it to us. We distilled that into essentially a brandy, and some of our hand sanitizer was that for a while. We were able to help give them some for their community and use some for us, and it's been the weirdest thing, but the best.
But a hard pivot.
Yeah,
Quite the hard pivot.
Yeah. Like every single, like the packaging, we would get phone calls from people talking. They would have this spiel about how they make the most famous mustard container in the whole tri-state, like a lot of those. And we ended up packaging a bunch of ours in Honey Bear containers and using kind of like large kitchen, almost like ketchup containers, and making the labels in house. But it was rewarding, and it was useful, and it was good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have our Honey Bear sanitizer.
Yeah. We've got more. And I unfortunately think I think there will be another run of that being important to people, so we'll have it on deck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I want to talk about the creative process for you.
Okay.
Because for me specifically, you can argue that there's probably some creative elements of things that I do in my job, but
I already did argue it. There is.
But I think it's a little different potentially with maybe your creative direction. When you have no starting point, someone just says, I don't know, just make something. How do you get inspiration? Where do you start? What do you typically do? What's that process look like?
As a two-part question.
I know.
I would say, if this is insider info for all guests at the bar, if you are looking for something unique and interesting, or maybe the menu's not speaking to you, or you just like that experience of having the bartender use what they have and create something for you, it's the first thing I would say is when they say I have nothing, is get a little annoyed. Not because there's not things that I can come up with and create, but truly and honestly, I know it sounds like the most blowhard, annoying thing to hear, but all I really care about is making something that the person having that cocktail would like. So at least, something, if you want like a longer drink, the keywords, if you want something, something with some effervescence, some bubbles, something with a spirit, but maybe not one spirit that you really dislike. Maybe you like pre-prohibition style stirred cocktails that really have a punch to it, and you'll have lots of sherries and vermouths and bitters and those kind of aspects to it. Some sort of version of that. But then beyond, once I have that, or if I don't, and I often don't, that's changed. People used to usually have a kind of jumping off point, and now we have to kind of prod it out a little bit. But I like doing it. I think it's the kind of bartending we do. If you just want the exact plug and pull recipes that you do every single day, then maybe craft cocktail bartending isn't the version that you should do. But that challenge, I to this day, I definitely live for it. And when that comes up, it's kind of my favorite thing to do. After that, my goal is to make a 5 cents cocktail for sure. Like I don't believe that it's just about how perfect it tastes and the flavor of it. I think that's by far the most important. But I want to figure that out, and then I want them to be able to drink it with their eyes the second they get it. So I start thinking of a visual aspect or a visual component, usually in that order: flavor, taste profile, visual, and then if there's any sort of personalization that I can add to it at the end, I would usually use those 3 steps. But for the recipes themselves, it still goes back to that training, using ratios. If you're going to do stirred cocktails, there's your 2-to-1 things, like 2-to-1 meaning 2 parts of one thing to 1 part of another. So like a Manhattan is a great example of that. It's 2 parts of your whiskey to 1 part of vermouth plus bitters. You can use that and start plugging in all kinds of different things. You can all of a sudden decide you want to use mezcal instead of whiskey or bourbon on one and the same. And then kind of go from there and change it up with seasonings with your bitters, or replacing your vermouth with a port or a sherry or something else more interesting. So you can start there, and then it's kind of reliant upon what you have on hand after that. So if you have a really good fresh bar program, like my friends at Denmark that I worked at forever, I know that
I love their cocktails.
Yeah, my favorite cocktail bar in the city.
Yeah,
100%,
mine too.
For sure. Until ours opens at Echo, and then they'll be number 2. No, they're number 1 in my heart forever. And on that aspect, I would say, without hesitation, that you can't get a better dealer's choice cocktail anywhere besides there, because they work hard to maintain a lot of fresh stuff. Sometimes an infuriatingly large amount, like things that might not be on your current cocktail, but they're going to have that fresh herb, and they're going to have those spices in house, and it's a playground for people who want to create.
When when I first thought about, okay, it'd be really cool to have a craft cocktail for each guest, I had no idea where to start. And so you had guided me to ask questions beforehand. And something unique that I think that you've done, you've tied in specific aspects about each guest into the drink, but you also have like this historical aspect of the ingredients that you're using that you tie in as well. And I think that's so interesting.
Well, I'm glad it's interesting, because it's usually just me nerding out, I guess. I like that. Like the items that you use or that we have at our disposal, especially in Ohio. I don't know if you've ever heard the term controlled state.
Yeah.
Meaning that there are all kinds of liqueurs and amaros and spirits out there that are available and that someone will distribute somewhere, but Ohio is limited by basically a group that allows X amount of things in. So it's already picked. So just because you're a bartender at a place that knows about this really fascinating new artichoke amaro from Italy that you've never heard of, and it's only available from this one distributor, if it's not an Ohio system, we can't get it. So like we're on an even playing field as far as what we have to create, but you don't have full access to all of it. And so once we have that, I suppose I like knowing the history of what's in that bottle and why that flavor matters and why it's interesting if it's lasted since 1510.
Right.
That kind of thing. There's stories to that.
Yeah, I feel like alcohol is one of those things.
Yeah.
There's definitely I've been to quite a few countries, and every time I go to a country, there's a very specific thing around alcohol.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah.
you're in the middle of a very, very rural area. It's like, well, we have rice wine.
Yep.
And so, like, there's just very unique and interesting kind of community-related
Yeah,
components
yeah.
to alcohol.
At 100%. Like, it tells stories of communities and societies and historical values, and the reasonings for why things have the flavors that they have are sometimes really odd things, or the reason that a certain thing will even exist. Like, I think we've had a couple of cocktails I've used here, and there's a couple of spirits that fit this category that are often, and this is also true in the beer community, that are made by monks.
Oh, cool.
And the reason that they were made originally was because these groups of monks were living this very simple life of resistance almost, and would go on huge fasts where they wouldn't have anything. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't drink, they wouldn't speak sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But they knew, I don't know if it was just because they wanted to have fun, but it really wasn't based in that originally. They were like, well, I need something for these months that we're going to go with none of this stuff to sustain us so that we don't die. And they would make these like beers, and then often there are herbal liqueurs and some follow-ups that have fit that category as well, that they were making just to survive during that time. So basically,
Wow.
proves you can survive with just beer.
Sweet.
That's all you need.
Don't tell college kids that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's always that, and sometimes it's just like the excitement of the flavor that's in a spirit. It might be something really unique and wild and odd that we've never tasted, and the reason is because it's made in this one country that has access to this one ingredient.
Right. Well,
And
something
that's
I
just-
didn't know was that like different minerals in the water and different areas
Oh, yeah,
have
yeah.
It's a huge contribution
Yeah.
to things like whiskey. And I had
water's
no
essential.
idea. I
Yeah.
had no idea. So to your point, like it's interesting because alcohol is also very native to very specific areas because of the resources they have available.
Right. Yeah, it's and it's a fascinating thing, especially having been in a distillery pretty in depth the last 7 or 8 months. I mean, it's odd when you picture seeing it sometimes, and you're putting grain into heated water, and you're basically just making this giant big oatmeal froth.
Right.
At some point in history, that happened to have happened with water and their grains, and then it got left and forgotten, and it fermented, and someone then also drank that fermented thing that probably
Yeah.
stank and was stank. Is that a word?
Yeah, I think so. Stunk.
It had an aroma, and then also figured out later that they could refine that even further and turn it into liquor, into a full spirit.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. So I like the processes. I like the history of it.
Well, and what's fascinating too in the U.S. is the prohibition and
Mm-hmm.
that taking away of that element of
Yeah.
society. I mean that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it is. It's super intense. We wouldn't have gotten so many good gangster movies without it, though.
I know. Well, the cool thing is too is all of the really cool bars that were created now. Now I'm blanking on the name of it.
Like speakeasy?
Yeah, speakeasy.
Yes.
I don't know why I couldn't think of
Mm-hmm.
that. Like all these really cool speakeasies that were created from
Right.
that era as
Right.
well.
It was, yeah, like in the resurgence of that, which is shocking now. It's 20 years or so of this cocktail Renaissance culture that we had based largely out of New York and New Orleans, which never left from there, has come full circle. And the speakeasy thing, like, I think it now defines more than just, it's not really just the literal a bar that's quiet and traditionally styled and pre-prohibition sort of flavors. Right. People use it as a catch-all to just mean a place that you can get cocktails that they know what they're doing at, or that are made real well.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
or
I'm
a
cool with
very
that.
exclusive thing that's secretive. Like
that's specifically the accurate use of it.
Yeah.
But like it's gotten to where like I don't think that from like Denmark, that's not a speakeasy. It's enjoyable. It's loud. It's rambunctious. It's fun, but it's also informative and smart and well put together. But people will often call that a speakeasy.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It's one of those terms that gets used kind of oddly like that, much like mixologist.
Sure.
A lot of my co-bartenders hate both of those terms.
Really?
Yes, I do not. I don't see.
What's the definition of a mixologist then? Because I feel like I know this.
A
But
perfectly fine one that I've said this before on things that I don't know why they're so bothered by it. I think it was coined. There's this guy Tony Abu Gammon who you might have some of his bar tools at home. It'll say tag bartending on it. He's a bartending consultant who much more influential and successful version, based out of Las Vegas, and he just ended up coining that term for it's a bartender who doesn't just clock in and make drinks. Not to say that doing that and those drinks that you make aren't good. They often are. Some of my favorite bars are bartenders who work that way. But that you're also basically a chef, and that you're doing preparatory work and research, and you're making your own things. You're making cordials, and you're making syrups, and you're using fresh juices, and you're making your own bitters and infusions. It's basically just whatever words you want to use for that. I'm perfectly fine with bartender, but I also do not care at all when people call me a mixologist.
I was going to say, I definitely refer to you as a mixologist.
Yeah, and I think that's why I don't understand. I suppose to the co-bartending community, it's a hot take, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like a thing to get mad about. Literally, someone made a word that helps other people describe the thing that we're doing that we think is, at least I think, is special and unique and fun and rewarding and a little bit extra, or a lot extra in my case, often. So whatever, I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it's a perfectly fine word.
So have you ever thought about expanding, like, for example, creating your own cocktail book, or have you before? And kind of some of these branding elements of doing what you do, but thinking about other kind of dimensions in which you could bring things to people to support that.
I have relentlessly long list of ideas and things I want to do of that nature. The book one, I actually really, really would. It's honestly just naivety about how to go about it. Our friend Adam actually brings this up to me frequently.
Wow.
Saying that we should do this, that I should do that. I guess I would not have a short list of inspirations and ideas to put into it, but I would have to work harder about figuring out the logistics of that and the details of putting that together. I would love that. Part of it's also too that I've followed, as far as the Reno Reserve stuff goes, I've kind of just followed the way it's went since like the second year of it. At first I was saying yes to everything.
As many entrepreneurs do.
Yeah. And I don't think I got lucky. I don't have many memories of the first 2 years of saying yes to an event or a menu development or a program that wasn't really rewarding and exciting. Like
That's awesome.
have had few feelings like the way the first 2 years of it were when I completed any new concept or any new project or any event. I was just like on top of the world. It was the best. It was, and still is. It's always been like that. And then it slowly people started, in little pockets at least, figuring it out. And I started getting hired for events and stuff, which is, it's a lot of work. It's more lucrative, to be truthful. But it's also, and it's usually just me. I started hiring in freelance or assistant bartenders here in the last few years for big events occasionally, which
very cool.
Also is, it was really cool. At first I just had to let go of the pride of it. And then at first I was like, but I'd have to give up some of the money for this, but it's worth every single cent of it. Every single cent for the calm and the ease of getting stuff, just the basics, just loaded up and brought in and explained to people and filling up your ice and all the rest of that. And I get to actually do something on a little small scale where I'm paying someone myself to help me do a thing that we've created. And
that's always rewarding.
It's the most rewarding. Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Awesome.
But so it's kind of like that. Sometimes we'll catch up with it a little bit as far as how much new or more boundary pushing stuff I want to do. I think that slowing down during this whole era we have right now has reconnected me to that. So hopefully I'll still do a few of them.
Well, again, thanks, Derek, for being here on this side. I know, hopefully you enjoyed your classy cocktail of White Claw.
I love lime White Claw all the time.
That's great.
And now I just said it. Whatever. It's public now. I like White Claw. I don't care. Cheers.
Hey, I like it too. So.
That's right.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we've got a few more episodes to record this season, so we'll see each other
That's right.
again soon.
We'll be back. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for episode 7 of the In Your Business podcast. Derek, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest this week. And of course, shout out to Molly and Beth. We hope to see you next week for episode 8, the final episode of season 1.
You did a really good job with that.
I have the opposite problem.
Beth, I guess she does know what she's talking about after all. Never take that back.
Did you need a White Claw before this? I feel like I should have drank a couple White Claws before this. I haven't been drinking. I have an adult push-up pop, like one of the kids' kind, but it's got vodka in the freezer. It's limey.
Oh my God.
Wasn't that segment so intriguing? Oh, I love Derek. Derek has been like the most joy to have in the studio while we've been recording. Oh, I'm Beth. I'm Beth Manduti. I'm like the person who came up with the studio concept, and Reagan's been here shooting and recording her In Your Business podcast. And today's special guest was Derek Reno. Oh, we love Derek. And this time, instead of making him craft his own cocktail for the show, we decided to put me in front of camera, the person who's always behind the camera. So here I am, creating cocktails. Derek is the owner of Reno Reserve, and he's the beverage director of Echo Spirits. He's been crafting cocktails all over Columbus, Ohio. So how the hell am I gonna come up with the perfect beverage? So we thought really hard, and we came up with some really good stuff. And I think everybody at home is going to be very happy to make this cocktail because it's pretty simple. It's only a few ingredients, quite honestly. So first we're going to start out with our glass. Maybe it's a highball glass. I don't know. It's pretty. And then we're going to just put some ice in it. Hey. And I'm not going to shake this cocktail up. Again, I want to keep this simple for everybody at home. I'm not going to shake the cocktail up because I have cleaned up way too much alcohol off of these walls during the shaking and the spritzing and all that stuff. So we're just going to keep it simple. So ice, ingredient number 1, and then ingredient number 2, just, we're going to go high class. Do a White Claw, a lime White Claw actually for our friend Derek. He says it's the most refreshing of all the White Claws and puts a stamp of approval on it, and it's perfect for summertime. So, Derek, this White Claw's for you. We love you, we enjoy you, we are so happy to have you as part of the In Your Business podcast family, so enjoy, bud.